there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, and welcome into Smite Too Long Didn't Watch, your one-stop shop for all things Smite Founders Series. My name is Gormizer. On that side is JMac. That side is Trelly, and way back there on a TV screen that I swear, and I love this, is my favorite thing about that TV screen. No matter what we do, it always looks green screen to me. Like it looks like it's like, oh, somebody put it in post, or like he like inserted himself. Like we're on Malum's React stream right now, and he's watching this, about to like rip into us about wrong opinions or something. But he's real. Like that's there. We could stand in front.
We all just randomly pause, like he paused the video, just like. And
but Malum, I love you. We'll talk to you later because you're going to be doing the other regions that we get to second, third, I guess technically, because the first one we talk about is typically EMEA. We've got NA playoffs kicked off for a few regions this weekend. That's what Malum's probably going to be going into, and by probably I mean he better be, because otherwise, as well as the fact that we are done with Swiss. I said kicked off. They are kicking off. That's the better way to word it, because they're starting tomorrow, as it turns out. So playoffs are kicking off tomorrow alongside last chance qualifiers. Swiss ended. Open bracket and all those other regions ended. And so we're at that point where like, hey, we're more moving forward. And now the teams that get eliminated are like, that we see are like, for real, Zo's gone. Yep. It's the end of the line. If we say, hey, this is an elim match, sorry, dude, Dunzos, and you know, good luck next time. For everybody else, it is still the path to Vegas. So we are November 1st, rabbit, for anyone who hasn't said it yet. And shout outs to like the 4 Southerners watching that understand what.
I was going to say, I have no idea what you're talking about.
And we are in the, we've got 2 weeks of last chance qualifier.
2 months and
2
weeks of playoffs.
1 LAN week.
And then
a Vegas week. So technically 6 weeks of competition, which means we've done 6 weeks, which makes sense. 5 weeks of Swiss. Maybe we've done
Actually, we've done 7. We're over halfway through
guys,
now.
I'm bad at math, as it turns out.
We're in the final stretch.
Yeah, we're pretty much... Look, we might as well already be in Vegas. And you should be ready for it. January 17th through 19th, 2025. Make sure that you're tuning in as we come to you from the HyperX Arena, Las Vegas. But first and foremost, we got to talk about what happened this week and what's going to be happening this next week. And JMac, you did EMEA.
Yeah, we covered
the haps over there.
So I will preface EMEA by saying that there's only 2 matchups to really talk about this week, because one of them was a forfeit. Bills Goons versus DDK was a forfeit matchup that Bills Goons get the win there, so they get to go to the last chance qualifier. So good for Bills Goons.
Thumbs up.
The other 2 matches, though, we will talk about, and we're going to go ahead and kind of talk by starting with Smoke Break versus Titans Reloaded. This was a team in Smoke Break that we weren't expecting to see have to go to the final week of play, but given how Swiss works and given how some of the the RNG end up panning out, it kind of became an unfavorable matchup for them, because they made it all the way to the qualification week, start up 2-0, and then they had to go against, I believe it's Team Risk, and they lost to Team Risk. Not to be unexpected, Team Risk is kind of team to beat. Then they had to go against Giovanni Giorgio, which is also not a big one that you want to have to fight up against. Smoke Break falling 2-0. Oh, no, that was Mockingbird they had to face. That was who they had to face in week 4, because Giovanni knocked Mockingbird down to that point. Then they come into week 5. So it just ended up being they hit a couple of bad RNG matchups into it, who they had to beat. They get into this one, and it's against Titans Reloaded, and this one just kind of ended up being the Johnny show. I think that this clip, and kind of just the culmination of this match, was that Johnny just gets really far ahead in most. This is a very early clip from the kind of the start, but this is really where the kind of snowball effect starts in for Smoke Break, is because one thing that I've always talked about with Johnny is that there are 2 forms of Johnny that you will see in a matchup. You will see, like, minute 5, as soon as I've got my ultimate, I'm going to go in and we're just going to start snowballing a game through, and we're just going to play through Johnny. He's going to get kill after kill after kill, or in this instance, get a kill, set up for the rest of the team, escape, and then help them by landing a second kill after. Or you get the other Johnny, which is I'm going to be power farmer. I'm going to wait until I've got 4 items and I hit level 20 before I actually start getting into the action. But in this set in particular, we saw the minute 5, I've hit my ultimate stride, I'm just going to start killing everything on the map style of Johnny. And it just looked undefeated. And really, this is when Smoke Break, I feel at least, looks their best, is when Johnny is playing his A game, playing the gods that he can absolutely steamroll and carry on, in this case, Loki, and then game number 2, Fenrir. this is just where SMITEPro looks their best. So for Titans Reloaded, they had to go against one of the best teams who was the number 2 coming into this one and had to go through a little bit of hardship going up to it. Do I think that SMITEPro is still that number 2 team? I don't think so anymore. I think that Mockingbird, I think that Giovanni Giorgio have shown that they are probably 2 of the next best up teams, maybe even just dethroning SMITEPro in that point. But now SMITEPro has a little bit of chance to sit back because they've qualified to the playoffs, which means that for Titans Reloaded, they go up down into the last chance qualifiers. And for those who are unaware of how the last chance qualifier kind of works for EMEA, it's a little bit different than it is for North America. Because there weren't as many teams playing in the EMEA open bracket, we only had 2 teams come from that division upward, and then the 8 from this past Swiss page dropping down. And so instead, it now creates 2 groups of 5 teams that end up popping up here. We can actually kind of take a look at the rosters for everything for EMEA as well to kind of show exactly what's going to be happening. These are the 2 teams that are jumping up from the open bracket, the Mega Plumbers and KTG. So Sager, Masskill, Wolfie, Kalost, Zany, really good teams. And you're probably sitting there going, man, I recognize a couple of them. We were just casting some of those guys. There are some roster shakeups that can happen between week 4, week 5, and whatnot that kind of get them to these points there. At least for KTG, maybe a little bit less known than the Mega Plumbers on the opposite end there, but they are going to be going up against the bottom 8 from Switch, as I believe we have a combination of rosters and whatnot for them as well. But what's going to happen with EMEA is they're going to divide out into 2 groups of 5. Those 5 are going to play round robin over the course of the 2 weekends, and we'll take the top 3 from each of those groups to the playoffs for EMEA, which means we'll have 8 from Swiss that already made it there, and then the 6 afterwards. And you can see the 8 teams from EMEA who I guess dropped down technically into the LCQ for stage 3 here. Chase the Enemies, DDK, Let's Go Asgard again, MMB, Old and New, Project Win, Threat Level Midnight, and Titans Reloaded, as just mentioned there. I think Titans Reloaded does have a lot to go, and facing off against SMITEPro is never a fun one to have to do in the last week and the last chance to qualify in. Now they're in the actual last chance qualifiers. I really love what we've been seeing out of Dark. Usually Dark is the person who is kind of getting the ball rolling for Titans Reloaded, but against Johnny, it's a really tough matchup. Another team that ended up dropping down here is Threat Level Midnight, as you can see there in that 6th spot. I love what we've been seeing out of Distortion. There's always been this storyline with Distortion ever since we saw the Anubis solo go absolutely crazy. That's kind of been a talking point of this team, is what can Distortion do. But I really think that Valerian and Sasuke over in the duo lane have been another like secondary storyline to kind of follow. And so I think for them, going up against Tythonic this week really drugged Tythonic through the mud, especially in game number 2. And I think game 2 is the kind of the big one to hone in on, is that Emmanuel went into the Zeus mid. Now, just from what we saw in maybe some of our casuals and maybe what you guys have played against in your casual, your ranked games, and even seen in some competitive, is that Zeus can do a boatload of damage. The problem with Zeus is that he is very susceptible to going down, very susceptible to dying. So for Emmanuel playing the Zeus in mid, a lane that is usually a little bit more volatile than anything else, it's a very small lane, multiple paths to get in there. They camped Emmanuel pretty hard on the side of TLM. But when you can get to a moment of late game, and unfortunately we don't have the clip for this one, but there was a point in late game that really became the tipping moment. It's when Zeus is 6 slotted, full build, has the rest of the team around. You get one good ultimate to set up, whether it be a Yamoja wall or an Odin cage, something like that, to lock a few players in. You drop Lightning Storm down, throw out that chain lightning and get a quick detonate, and it's curtains. And that's exactly what would have been there provided for it. So I think for Threat Level Midnight to be able to go toe-to-toe with Tythonic, not just in Game 1, but especially Game 2, which ended up going 40 minutes of play, is something to be proud of, and is definitely one of the reasons why I'm kind of edging to be one of the top teams for their groups to move on. Kind of talking about it, I already mentioned LCQ is going to be the 2 groups of 5 for EMEA, round-robin style, and best of 3 for all their matches where the top 3 advance. For those groups, in Group A, I've got Chase the Enemy, DDK or Discípulos del Chaos, and Project Win moving forward, at the very least for my favorites. And it's just week 1. There's still another week after that one, but it's kind of my early predictions moving forward. And then for Group B, Threat Level Midnight, who I just mentioned there, and then Old and New and Titans Reloaded, I think are kind of the 3 teams to be watching over on that side as well. So if there's anything to really kind of take out and kind of look at for anything. I think that this is going to be a very interesting one comparatively, because for North America, which Charlotte will break into a little bit later, is just going to be 4 groups of 4 bracket style play. But with this round robin, it gives you a lot of extra chances to kind of fight back in. You have one bad set, no worries. You're no longer on that elimination. Now you can have that chance to kind of bounce back up here. So as mentioned, for Group A, CTE, DDK, and Project Win are kind of my favorites to go in, but seeing as the roster that Mega Plumbers has put together, I think that there is some upset potential coming from this team that, kind of bumped themselves up from that open bracket side. So that's kind of my 3, and then my potential dark horse that can pop in there with the Mega Plumbers roster. And as you can see, it's just going to be that round robin style. And then over for Group B, as mentioned, TLM, Threat Level Midnight, Old and New, and Titans Reloaded are going to kind of be the teams for me to watch. MMB kind of had a bit of a falling as the earlier stages of Swiss went through, has some potential to bounce themselves back, but really I think that this one feels a little bit more decisive than it is over in Group A. So I think a lot of eyes mostly to Group A, but for Group B, still some potential pop-ups out of these ones. So kind of, again, recapping everything that happened and maybe what to kind of expect going into this weekend. It was a Smoke Break 2-0 Titans Reloaded, 2-0 for Tithonic over TLM, but it was a close 2-0 at that one. And then Bill's Goons got their forfeit win over DDK. If you're looking for any teams to really watch over in Group A, it is again going to be Chase the Enemy, Discípulos del Chaos, and Project Win. For Group B, Threat Level Midnight, Old and New, Titans Reloaded, kind of the teams to keep your eyes on for the EMEA region.
I'm really excited for him. I'm also, Mega Plumbers is one of those teams that does 2 things. One, it's one that I'm now really curious to see what happens when they get thrown into the mix. But they're also the example, I don't know if people remember like way back when we were talking about the format originally, we were like, yeah, and for any team that shows up and forms too late to join Swiss, guess what that open bracket was for? Guess what that open bracket was for?
Exactly.
Right? And so maybe the perfect example of that. No, it makes me excited. I feel like there's going to be a lot of really fun games. And like you had kind of showcased, and I guess worth mentioning, you had touched on it. Last Chance Qualifiers is both tomorrow, so November 2nd and 3rd, and then November 9th and 10th are the 4 days that it's going to be going on. And it's going to be EMEA, and of course, that bozo who's sitting over there. It's going to be NA included as well, right? So you'll be able to watch pretty much the same style of format, at least broadcast-wise, that we've had the last few weeks, right? 11, 1, 3, and 5, having 2 matches in EMEA, 2 matches in NA, assuming everything stays the way we expect it and as planned. But I know there's I guess you already mentioned. I'm trying to figure out like what's a good segue, because like you'd mentioned the teams you expect to make it forward. You talked about last week and wrapped it up pretty good.
Watch EMEA.
Watch EMEA. There's the wrap up for it. Instead, we'll turn our attention over here.
So,
hi, Trelly.
What's up, Gore?
How is North America?
Well, as it turns out, there's a whole other region, at least one, that was going on.
Got a hint.
Last weekend.
3 more people.
There is a couple more, and we got a guy for that. But
we got a guy. I know a guy.
We're going to be talking about the 3 matchups that you may have missed, and then we're going to look forward to the teams that unfortunately got knocked down and are going to be...
And then get up again.
Right, but they're probably going to be more so the powerhouses of the LCQ, right? If you made it that far into Swiss, you should be feeling pretty confident. But we had, 2 2-0s and 1 2-1, which was pretty exciting to watch because, again, when it gets to this far into Swiss, the teams that are putting up fights, that are really going the distance, are the ones that I expect to be able to battle back into LCQ. But we had Name and Progress versus First Name Zach. That was a 2-0 in favor of Name and Progress. We had Borscht 2-0 Mr. Play-by-Play, but it was a little bit closer than that. And then, of course, we had Look Within, which was a 2-1 over Garth's Goblins. That the one game they lost obviously didn't look close, but the 2 games they lost looked pretty decisive. I think they had a pretty good P's and B's strategy as far as I'm concerned. But talking about the strengths of these squads that did make it, because we're not going to be seeing them for a while, right? They qualified. They're on to playoffs. Have fun. See you later. Borscht, man, they have been interesting to me. They have been back and forth between looking like a top echelon number 3 in the region team to being like these guys can't get a handle on their gameplay. They're trolling. I don't really know what they're really going for. This week, I actually really did enjoy a lot of what I saw from Rat Milk in particular. Bro can play. Like, bro can jungle. That much we can see. And also the addition of Awesome Jake into this roster as a mainstay has been interesting as well. A little bit of a lane swap here. You can see Baskin is playing in mid. You got Pagon going over to the duo lane, and Awesome Jake with a huge initiation for the team, which, if you guys remember from how Jake likes to play, at the moment he's 2-6, but he's got 11 assists, and that's the thing. I think teams that play around Awesome Jake function in his ability to just like go in, set things up, die, and let the team just reap the benefits. And reap is exactly what Rat Milk did here on this Thanatos. Bro was just blowing up just about everyone. This is a pick that he likes to go to a lot. No one is banning it away from him, and he just gets to run through teams. 14 kills at this point. And again, Mr. Play-by-Play is a pretty stacked roster. I think these guys are going to be able to tear it up in LCQ for sure. But I have liked Borscht a lot more this week than I have in weeks of past. It's just that content improvement, which tells me that it wasn't just like a group of like really good Smite 1 players, and they were like, we're not going to take this too seriously. You know, we're just going to play, blah, blah, blah. I think they took one sting, and they're like, okay, we need, like, that's done. Like, we are still competitors. We are competitors at the end of the day, and we are still hungry. So I really did need to see that from Borscht, and I think they have been looking a lot better. But that does not mean that Mr. Play-by-Play isn't also a squad to fear. We'll talk about them more later. Next up, this is something that I have found very interesting, and I think needs to be addressed for every support player in competitive Smite 2. In Smite 1, there was a couple Guardians that had like very high early clear, right? You could do things with Sylvanas, you could do things with, you know, a lot of these Guardians that just came to the wave and just disrupted it. That doesn't really happen so much anymore besides Yemoja. So what a lot of teams are doing is proxy strats with Yemoja, or just pre-level 5 getting ridiculous aggression. And you can watch, mid laner is level 4 here, invading 2 level 5s by himself, steals the buff, is able to get level 5 because of that disruption. This is a 2v3. You can see Athena's ulting in, the pulls come through, but watch mid laner. Drops the River's Rebuke, picks up 3. Like, this is just, that was a level 4 Yemoja that had way too much confidence, but yeah. it ended up working out. Again, level 4 rolling up to 2 people with ult. You don't do that in duo lane. If you're level 4 and you see they have ults, you hide under your tower. But Yemoja is one of the few characters that can make this play work, because her pre-level 5 is disgusting, right? Yeah. She doesn't have cooldown, she has Omi, so you can just spam the bubble bounce. So if you're a support at the moment, get a Yemoja in your wheelhouse, or figure out how you want to play against it, because I think she is going to be, especially for some of these EMEA guys, I mean, you got to be looking at that first pick Yemoja more and more as these weeks go through. Definitely keep your eye on it, because an early lead in duo turns into an early Gold Fury, turns into a snowball that you cannot contain. And then last up, of course, this was the one matchup that did end up going 3 sets, going the full distance. This was Garf's Goblins versus Look Within. And Garf's Goblins, I called it out in P's and B's. I was like, Sunprod's going to try and get Ama. If he gets it, we could be in for an interesting game. That's exactly what happens, right? Game 1, they get Ama. They look good. They win. Game 2, it was kind of like, let's just let Ama through. You know, let's see what happens if we let Ama through. Look Within takes it pretty convincingly. So then Game 3, Look Within says, hey, they're back in first pick. Let's just ban the Ama, and let's just give up one of these priority picks that we've been worried about. Let's see what can happen. And this game was not close. This was the definitive nail in the coffin here for Garf's Goblins. It just seemed like Look Within had them figured out. It is 17-5 at this point. There just wasn't a lot that could be done. You can see Lord Garfield sitting at 0-7 here. He went to the Mordred every single game this set. Looked great in game 1. But when Sunprod doesn't get off to this great start, on the Herc jungle no less, not a pick that I would have really loved to see, it just didn't mesh very well. And unfortunately, this was the end of that matchup.
Sorry, that was too good to ignore.
I'm sure it got caught too. I may have accidentally rolled a battery off the table, and it was very slow. Yeah, that was my bad. And yeah, so I think Look Within showed not only that they were able to like pick apart and dissect exactly what the issue was, because there was a lot that looked good in game 1. It wasn't just Sunprod on the Ama. I think Dest had a pop-up performance. Lord Garfield had so many clutch ultimates, but they found the one pick that like really could break apart this draft. So Look Within is definitely a team to watch, of course. They're going to be looking clean. But I do think that Garf's Goblins, they've been a team to watch for me for a while now. We've been seeing them consistently improve. If we could see just a little bit more of like a God Pool switch up, I think that would do them well. And also just, be able to play through different avenues. It seems like when Lord Garfield's on, the whole team looks good. But when he's behind, it's really only Dest that is able to stay like even farm-wise, and everyone else sort of cannot really back up for it. So definitely something to consider. But now we have to be talking about, hey, there was some other teams that we haven't watched, the open bracket squads. There's going to be some names that you're familiar with. We have the rosters here for you, and just some teams to look at. These are not the guys that you've been watching that got knocked down. This has been the open bracket squad. Already, I'm going to be honest with you, I had my teams to watch up. There wasn't too much from just rosters alone that was getting me like, obviously anyone can make any sort of play happen here, but I was going to hype up when we saw Yummers until I saw their name last week on air, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to hype them up anymore. Don't like saying Yummers out loud, but he's
done it twice.
Yeah, this is a group of rank grinders. These guys are actually absolutely going to be a threat. Kitty Party, of course, a squad that you should keep your eyes on. Remember, I brought a Donut Doug pentakill clip today against me in rank. So Broken Play, definitely watch that squad as well. And of course, I'm looking towards number 2 squad, Go T5. I'm not sure exactly how they want to pronounce it, but that's also a squad of guys that you should keep your eyes on just because they've been around the scene for a while, and they've got plenty of got going for them. But these guys, the open qualifier, that's all well and good, but to earn my respect over these LCQ squads that have been knocked out, I'm going to have to see that play. So let's go ahead and look at the squads from LCQ that have already dropped into that mix. This is the bottom 8. Of course, Garf's Goblins, we already mentioned. Mr. Play-by-Play, honestly, maybe my favorite for this entire bracket. I think that they have the talent. They just have not put in enough hours just yet. That's my take. I could be wrong. They could be playing for hours on hours every day. But I play ranked a lot, and I only really see Snatty so far from this list. So we will continue to monitor and see if they're able to live up to the hype. And then, of course, first name Zach for me is also in the list of a top contender for both of these brackets. I just think that, again, there's different groups. You got to keep your eyes on it. There's going to be 4 groups of 4 for NA. But those are the guys that I've been looking at. Once again, that's Garf's, Mr. Play-by-Play, and first name Zach. There's still so much possibility for upset. That's kind of the benefit of a game like this that's being constantly updated. The people that are putting in the hours and just grinding out like scrims and ranked gameplay, learning the new characters that come in, learning how the meta shifts every single patch, those are going to be the guys on top. I mean, that's just it. SMITE 2 is evolving every single day, and that is without question, because every day that I get on to play, I have to install a patch that changes something, buffs something, makes something worse, and it's all for the betterment of the game. So I'm watching the guys that are grinding. I'm looking my eye out for the people that I'm seeing in every single game. I'm seeing in scrims constantly. Those wouldn't be the ones that come time for Vegas, they're going to be ready to perform. So that has been the NA breakdown. Again, only had 3 matches to go over, but there's a lot to look forward to that you do not want to miss.
And that's the other thing worth mentioning, because J-Mac, you had touched on this. EMEA is 2 groups of 5, yep. Top 3 from each group, so 6 teams joining 8 for a 14-team double elim playoff bracket. So 2 teams from each group over there are getting eliminated. Over here, 2 teams from each group are also getting eliminated, but it's because there's 16 teams.
4 groups of 4.
Yeah, so you're taking 2 from each group, taking 8 total, joining the 8 that are already there for a 16-team double elimination playoffs bracket. And then at the end of those, no matter what, guess what? It's 3 from each. 3 from EMEA, 3 from NA. And they'll be going to the LAN, the knockout stage that's going to be here, like, I don't know, 30 feet that way?
On the other side of the door.
Pretty much just right over there. They're going to play to knock each other out. But 6, that seems like such a weird number.
Yeah, it's low.
It's because there would be 8 total. 2 of them coming from somewhere beyond the 2 regions, beyond the veil. As we bring in Malum, who can talk a little bit about LATAM, which is that region. That is going to be, it's Double Trelly.
It's the Double Trelly Power Hour.
I was even doing the thing where I was like going to look at Malum.
Imagine if they were mirrored.
You're looking at yourself.
That would have been good if they were flipped. Can I do something funny?
Ooh. Can you high five yourself? No, you
the
can't.
Double Trelly Trouble Hour.
Most people would just call that clapping. You had to cross over.
Yeah, hold on.
There you go.
Oh wait, we're cooking.
There we go.
Wait, and now my turn. Oh, ours
you
just
gotta
happens.
be-
Oh,
Ours
get cut
happens
off.
invisible.
There you go.
In LATAM, we are going to be bringing in two other teams. APAC and Brazil, however, are starting their play. I guess all three of them are starting their playoffs this weekend.
Yep.
Two teams from LATAM are going to be coming and joining NA and EMEA.
Hey, there he
And
is.
then there was some of those cash prizing, diamonds, all sorts of fun stuff like that are going on for APAC and for Brazil. And Malum, with them wrapping up their open bracket, I implore you, entertain me. I was going to educate me. The other wee word, dance monkey. No, educate me. Teach me what's been going on in all these fanciful other places.
There is a lot going on. So we're talking about the last chance qualifiers for the main regions. We're talking about playoff teams sitting and waiting. None of that's going on in the other regions right now. It is playoff time. It's the serious time. And also White Rabbits back at you from earlier. I know that saying too. Way too much time in the South. But also going back to the main topic at hand. So let's start with Brazil, because as you mentioned, LATAM, they got a couple teams that will play in to the December LAN. But looking at Brazil, I don't have any clips for Brazil this week. A little bit light on the casting. Another problem for me finding VODs. But for playoffs, I'm pretty sure the sewer squad's on it. So as always, shout out to the sewer team. But Brazil has continued to be wild for me. Last week, I mentioned that Los Leal didn't play in LATAM, and if you've been following along with SMITE Too Long Didn't Watch, Los Leal, they are the favorites in LATAM. At least they were. We'll get to that later. But for Brazil, they played last week, they dominated, and they took out Bruto X-Fire AMV. That name gets me every time I say it. Who were looking to go back-to-back. Well, Los Leal competed in LATAM this previous week, and Bruto X-Fire AMV, they're back on top. They were able to take down Zilla, who I've talked about a few times actually as being a very strong roster, and I was really interested what they could do. And they kind of got a buff because Bob's Brazilian, who I've talked about that team a few times as well. I called a lot of attention to Power ST2 on that roster as being a standout player. Well, Power is now competing on Team Kamikaze in LATAM. So a big loss for Bob Brazilian led to a big takedown for Zilla. They moved on to the finals, went up against Bruto X-Fire AMV, and they went down 2-0. So with those playoffs around the corner, I mean, Bruto X-Fire AMV has got to be my favorite, which is crazy because Zilla started out as such a heavy favorite for me. But even from watching the little bit of gameplay I have been able to see from Brazil, the fact that Bruto X-Fire AMV were able to team fight at all into Los Leal, who dominated the rest of Brazil when they were over there, that's kind of my hint. That's my playoff viewer guide, is that Brutal X-Fire could stand with some Titans from LATAM. So in Brazil, they have got to be the favorite. Bob's Brazilian, I mean, they did win their third place matchup against Odds. The key for them has to be replacing Power in getting that team chemistry back online without a hyper carry in the mid lane. And going forward, I think they can do it, but Zilla is going to be a very, very tough takedown. But that covers Brazil. Like I said, unfortunately, no clips this week. Hopefully next week that is rectified with all the great amateur and community casters, production teams that are putting in the grind right now with all of these off-air games. And there's been quite a few.
Yeah, specifically, and you had kind of mentioned this because I'm sure this is going to be where some of the clips from LATAM come from, but if it's the sewer squad, then you want to make sure you check out on_the_Delo, which I think is DEELO for that, just because that's where you will find a lot of these, whether it's other regions or maybe some of these backup games, playoffs potentially for Brazil that are going to be going on. A lot of fun that's going to be happening over there.
Well, I've got 3 regions of tabs, and you bought me the time to get to the LATAM tab.
Yes,
which means
that's
LATAM
exactly
time.
what I needed to do.
So it's LATAM time, and I brought a lot of clips from LATAM. It's the majority of the clips this week. The reason being, if you are curious what's going on in APAC, I am going to touch on it a bit, show a couple clips, but yesterday on SMITEPro, there was a viewer guide posted where I got to sit with a couple players who also cast in APAC, and they gave a pretty strong viewer's guide for somebody who's never tuned into the APAC region before as they begin their playoffs. So check that out for some really deep coverage. But for LATAM, they're my main focus this week as they're going into their playoffs and they're looking to qualify to compete in December in the LAN at the LAN in the studio. So, Team Kamikaze, I want to start talking about them because I mentioned them a little bit. I talked about Power ST2 joining the team. They looked good in their matchup. They didn't take down Los Leal, who they matched up against. They went down 2-0, but again, that's Los Leal. I've been singing Los Leal's praises like crazy the last couple of weeks. Same thing can be said for the Sewer squad, as them just being so good. And for Team Kamikaze to come out, and they had some moments that looked really good and even caught Piku, Danny off guard, and Tilo for that matter, of, hey, they look better than we could have anticipated. I mean, even here, they have a lead over Los Leal, and you'll see Los Leal do some fighting that's very Los Leal, but Team Kamikaze, they've got presence, they've got, I don't know, they got us something. They just couldn't handle a 3-man no escape.
Se queda totalmente solar el Team Kamikaze, se va a tener que retirar. Ahora el que va a ser castigado va a ser el Cernudo Dilo. Me parece que va a caer todo el Team Rojo. Bien ahí el Rampage por parte de lo que viene siendo el equipo de los Lil. Quedó libre lo que viene siendo nuestra querida Materazo. Perfecto lo que acaba de hacer la GKT. Triple por parte de la Jinwell. Te queda libre lo que viene siendo la Gold Fury. Qué mala toma de decisión que acaba de meter el equipo de Kamikaze.
So
Era irse, pero por el otro lado, Dilo.
That particular team
hemos
fight.
visto las consecuencias de sus acciones.
me too, Tilo.
No
Tilo's
compré
energy is always
bastantes
at a 10.
talismanes para compartir con
I
tus
think he's got a
amigos.
20 in his range. But the thing about that team fight in particular is I've talked about how good Los Leal looks in their team fights. That was my key of if we see Los Leal and Malibu as the two teams to make it to the LAN in December, I think Los Leal's team fighting could be their strength. Even if they get a little bit outmatched, outpaced, I think their team fighting, assuming they were on par level-wise, could be good enough. But Team Kamikaze, with one roster change of putting Power ST2 in the mid lane, seemingly we're bringing it to them. I mean, that fight, while it didn't look amazing for Team Kamikaze, there was an answer for everything. There was a kill for kill until the turning point, kind of an answer to the no escape. Another open the gates comes out. That looks fantastic from the Hakate. But the fact they could do it on week 1 of their roster change, to me, says a lot. And Power ST2 in particular, I keep talking about him as a player because he's one I'm really familiar with. I've been casting him since for the last 3 years. He actually used to team and play with Rat Milk on a team in the SMITE Draft League, an amateur league a few years ago, where Rat Milk was the only English-speaking player on the team, and they were incredibly dominant. They would go on to, I think they came in second in the finals, and they beat teams that would go on to become the Aru Scorpions, that would go on to become Shabala Storm in these most recent Worlds qualifiers. And that was with Power playing on ping alongside 3 other members, and Rat Milk, who obviously we see doing fantastic in NA. But that's why I think Power is such an impact player. It's not just, you know, oh, a mid laner moved from Brazil to LATAM. It's an impact hyper carry mid laner is on a team that was already kind of looking okay against the top dogs in LATAM. But the top dogs in LATAM continue to be Los Leal and Malibu. They met up once again in the grand finals. I kind of can't believe I'm saying this, but Los Leal lost to Malibu. Malibu has conquered their demon in the LATAM region. They were able to take out Los Leal. I can't. When I first saw it in the bracket and when I had heard Dilo talking about
You
it
had to
in
double
the
check.
squad chats, I was like,
Something's
what
gone wrong
happened?
here.
How could this possibly have happened? I did bring 2 of the 2 clips from the games we can take a look at. The first one is fun. I mean, their team fights are fun. Look at the score, 21 minutes in, 12-12, 3K, and just a war in the mid lane. But I'll let Piku and Dilo do a better job of explaining it than I can. In terms of hype, at least.
Puede dar un básico así, perfecto, es un 2-1 a favor de los Lil. Buen tornado por parte de Fachicho. Veremos nomás el pull por parte del Hércules, lo empuja el tornado, perfecto, sopla y pasa de largo. Hay un 2-2. 14-14, qué forma de
So
estar
the reason I
empatado,
brought this
Dilo.
clip in particular
Ellos están
is to really point out the pacing for Los Leal and Malibu. 22 minutes in, and in terms of tempo, they're very close. There's answers for kills, constantly looking for picks, even when you disengage, looking for some more. I think that kind of play that we're seeing from these 2 teams is so important to look at for when they could show up in those, or when they do show up in the December lands, assuming Team Kamikaze doesn't make that miracle run. because it was clean. I mean, Loselil gets ahead, Malibu's back in, Malibu steps too far, Loselil gets a pick. They're perfectly matched for each other. And I did mention a few weeks ago that I talked with Decoy on Team Loselil, and they are scrim partners, so it does make sense. But at the same time, they just, I don't know, they're looking better each week. And I mentioned they all play North America servers for ranked, and they're playing on ping and ranked, and they're all doing really well. They're scrimming against each other. From the last I talked with them, I want to say that I heard that they were looking to do more scrims with NA teams that are just having problems kind of finding that in. If they get some scrims out before the LAN in December, I really do think that there could be potential. I'm not saying we're going to see Loselil show up and instantly take a game off of a team like Cowabunga. I'm just saying if it happened, I'm going to be the least shocked person sitting in that room to see it go down.
It's going to be fun to watch again because of these teams, like you said, having such a dominating performance in their region so consistently until this, and it's still the same two teams having the dominating performance. It's just some swapsies, but it's going to be really fun to watch what they can do as an offer, and just maybe and then some, right? Like what can they do to maybe push the boundaries a little further? Can we expect something different? Region wise, like you see, we're not in this position. I feel like, when we had a lot of intra-regional play in the beginning of SMITE 1, there were a few more gods than there are now, so there was still time for oh wow, that's a really weird pick. Nobody plays that in North America. What are they doing?
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to get that, but I'm curious about stylistic choices, on the map, macro play, things like that, when met with NA, EMEA, and all that stuff, and what they're going to do. And
we've seen they get one game, the confidence a team like that can completely change their gameplay.
Momentum
because
is
they're
crazy.
Wait, we can do this? We just took a game off of a team name of a 5M, so we can do this. I think that's the big thing. And now that I've got my APAC queued up, I do have one last clip from LATAM I wanted to show of just, again, more good gameplay. The quality of gameplay that was on display in LATAM this previous weekend was fantastic. And rolling into playoffs, it makes it even more exciting. And again, shout out to Piku, Danny, Evo, and Tesdai for putting in the hard work. And Danny gets so hype on these plays. Danny might be one of the most hyped casters I've ever heard in my life. I tuned in at one point, he was just screaming.
Que viene siendo el Hércules, va a caer también la Yemoja, sí, triple por parte del Cernunos. Queda abierta la posibilidad de
So even there, seeing Malibu take a triple kill off that so cleanly off of Loselil, that would have been foreign to me a few weeks ago. But again, playoffs coming up for LATAM, and as Gore mentioned, on _the _Delo, DEELO, they've got all of it covered. They're going crazy. They're assembling the Avengers of the amateur production scene right now. They've been going crazy today to try to cover LATAM, Brazil, and the off-air NA and EMEA games. So they're putting in the work. And for LATAM in particular, I know their coverage is going to be really good. The casting has been exciting. Even if you don't know Spanish like me, I've just been enjoying sitting and listening and man, this is so fun. I'm just having a good time.
The clips, and I know it's Delo's voice specifically, when Delo gets excited, it just brings you with it, right? You don't have to know what's going on. Honestly, you could probably show it to somebody who doesn't even know anything about SMITE, and they will know that they need to be as excited as possible, whether they know Spanish or not. But the last one as well, and I mean this is an absolute compliment, but it felt like listening to a radio broadcast, which is the best thing, where I'm just I'm in this. I love this. I love the atmosphere and the vibe. So it's really fun to get to listen to.
It really is. And again, all the credit in the world to them, and make sure to check them out. I know we're going to get them some promo. We've been showing their clips, but I'm very serious when I say take some time and check out a broadcast. It's worth it. But speaking of broadcasts that are worth checking out, SMITE OCL has been handling the APAC Founder Series. That's on SMITE Game on Sundays at 4 a.m. Eastern. And it's been going crazy. They've got their playoffs here. As I mentioned before, I sat down with Asme and Jay Beto, two casters and players from the region, and we did a bit of a viewer's guide. So if it's your first time ever seeing APAC and you're wondering what teams are good, what teams do I look out for, who's the star players, what picks can I expect, that's your go-to. But I did bring a couple clips, and for good reason. Let's start off with the big one, the exciting one, with of course a surprise moment on who's casting, because it surprised me too. But APAC had a pentakill on SMITE Game, so we got to show.
I know Neith is a potent god and can have impact, but these stacking items are so important for her. And this Gold Fury, I think it's free. Prenzel's going to step up. He may look to contest with that excavate, but at the same time, Soul's wrapping around the back.
Here comes Pursue the Weak, going to try to find some targets there. Not quite successful thanks to those beads. Now the Fury is still leashed, but unfortunately, Prenzel going to be turned into a pretzel, tied up, brought down. Here comes the Spirit of the Nine Winds, pulverizes Dot Hog for the double kill on Frenzy. Fury goes down there to Apes together. Strong triple kill there for the Kukulkan. Quadra kill on the Barchimon. Give it to them neath the pillar block. The Aegis won't save you. Grant them at the winds of change have blown. Apes together. Strong pentakill for Frenzy.
God,
Delo's just everywhere, apparently.
That's insane.
You should have seen my surprise. They ping me. I've mentioned it before, but there's a recap channel that the SMITE OCL team was gracious enough to make for me, where they give me clips, they give me a lot of details. They do a lot of the work for me, I won't lie to you, but they're so into the detail. And I get like 4 pings at 5 in the morning, and I wake up and I'm like, oh cool, a Penta. I open it and I'm like, wait a second.
Your first reaction? Well, where's the accent? Where'd it go?
Yeah, I know.
Something's gone wrong here.
Where's the Outback Steakhouse to this commentary? It was completely gone. But no, an awesome call, an awesome pentakill, and APAC's got a lot going on. So we have one more clip, but first I'll kind of talk a bit about the playoff bracket that they've got. Again, check out that viewer guide if you really want a place to dive through and get a lot of the detail, because man, did Jay Beto and Asme hook me up. But the big one is the roster apocalypse. I mentioned that last weekend.
Yeah.
There were like 17 roster changes, if not more. And one of the teams that emerged is 99% engaged as being a real chance. They have a real chance to compete in these playoffs and really make it through far. I know the biggest discussion point right now in APAC is, can they take out Fish? Because Fish? In Sunday School they've been going at it. They've been neck and neck the entirety of the tournament. They've had their incredible matchups, but 99% engaged, they showed up. And if they can take down Fish, then it kind of throws the whole bracket into dismay a little bit. And I kind of think they could, from what I've been watching. I mean, I'm all on the Sunday School hype train. I'm not going to lie to you. If we were bringing APAC teams to a LAN to compete, I would be blowing the whistle and on the Australian hype train for Sunday School. But I don't think it's impossible for both Fish and 99% engaged to do it. I just think it's going to be fun. And like I said, SMITE game, 4 a.m. And also their VODs get posted, which is a little more friendly to us
you can watch those anytime, as it turns out.
Exactly.
Like right after this, you can just open up an APAC
Start checking it out.
It's that easy.
At OCL SMITE on YouTube is where they post all their VODs. Fantastic casting. Their production quality is so good. I mean, same to Sewer Squad. The community, the region tournaments have been popping off. But I did bring, as I mentioned, one more clip from APAC, because this reminded me of a play we've seen in North America. You might remember from Adapting, because it also, as cool as the play is, has an anticlimactic ending. But I had to include this play when I saw it. Shisano's a cool character.
Does have ult. Oh, nice.
Oh
my god! Crazy! That was a crazy block onto the Pursue the Weak there. Texie still
so upsetting to watch
that nothing
Mordred
comes out of it.
away.
Yeah, the fact that nothing, like, that is such a sick play.
I was right there with the casters though. When I saw it, I was like, oh my god, it was so sick. But that's the kind of, I talked a lot about the top teams in APAC. They've got their macro down. I've talked before, they have Sharks coaching Sunday School over in APAC, who a lot of people may be familiar with from coaching the Valkyries, but the micro play too has been exciting, but the mechanics are there for so many players. That's kind of the thing that reminds me a lot of some of the North American community leagues at times. A lot of the top leagues, I think of leagues like Olympus SMITE League, where they've got their Athens division, and the level of competition there outside of some trolling is always so impressive, and the mechanics in particular. I mean, that's where we've seen players like Sunprod from NA hone their mechanics, and APAC brings that same thing. So there's a lot of future stars. There's a lot of great gameplay. Production quality is maxed out. The other regions of SMITE are rocking it. APAC is fantastic. LATAM's been exciting, and Brazil, they've got underdogs who are ready to perform. You can't ask for much more, and you really can't have any more SMITE gore.
Yeah, no, it's like, well, first off, if we had any more Smite, I think we would break something. Like, there's so much going on.
You should see my tabs right now of all these different regions.
It's going to feel so weird when we get, I guess, like after, playoffs for these other regions and then playoffs for NA and EMEA. Like, we're going to get to the point where it's like, oh, we just have one. What do you mean we only have like 1 week?
Yeah,
of
like, what do you mean we're all watching the same game?
Like, huh? Like, this is so weird. What do you mean? It is going to feel a little awkward, but there's so much Smite going on. You want to make sure that you can check it out. And Mal, I want to say thank you up front and foremost. Again, you can go to youtube.com/SMITEPro, where I believe we put out that interview a couple days ago. There's also a tweet on our Twitter where you got to talk to the APAC guys for a viewer's guide, which I can tell you now is incredibly helpful. It is very, very nice to be able to watch, because even when you're like me and you're able to catch a little bit of some of the games, you definitely need the intel. You need to know a little bit more. And of course, with playoffs that are going to be going on in LATAM, playoffs that are going to be going on in Brazil as well, 3 of those that are happening, while the last chance qualifiers are going on in the other regions. And then they're going to get their playoffs. And that's where these 2 bozos come back into the equation. It's been a wild Founders series so far. I imagine it's going to continue. Trelly.
Yes.
What are your final thoughts on everything?
I mean, we're going to have some banger matchups. You already know what you missed last week. Don't make that mistake again and miss this week, because we've already broken down for you the teams that you need to watch, and there's a lot on the line.
That does it. I wanted one really succinct one. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to choose somebody and put you on the spot and see what happens. That's what we get. It was really fun in Swiss. It is still really fun in the Founders series, though. So again, you want to make sure that you're tuning in for our broadcasts. It's 11 a.m. Saturdays, Sundays. We got 4 more weeks happening regularly.
To remind people, it's also daylight savings time in America this weekend.
Sunday. Yeah, so if you're in EMEA, that already happened.
Yeah, so Saturday is
tomorrow will be weird, but then it'll be back to normal.
Yeah, Saturdays are normal, and then like Sunday is like we go backwards 1 hour kind of thing.
I have a friend who has a flight on Sunday that I'm like, dude, you've got to remember, like, time is changing.
I just remembered that because I have to remind like the streamers that I help manage before that. It's like, by the way, there's a time change happening, and also for all of us.
Non-zero chance. You're gonna have to remind somebody.
I'll put it in the group.
I will not be surprised if in the morning we have someone who is. Actually, I guess it'd be the opposite because we're falling back, so you get an extra hour, quote unquote. Daylights. I have a whole rant about that thing. We can get into that some other time, though.
That's for another podcast.
I would not be surprised if maybe somebody shows up a little too early because they forget to set their clocks back. So make sure you do that, and make sure that you tune in, on all the auxiliary streams that we had already mentioned for the other regions and for maybe some off-air games. But as well, of course, make sure you hang out with us on twitch.tv/SmiteGame or on YouTube or wherever you happen to be watching us. If you decide to watch strictly through Twitter clips, that's your prerogative, but more power to you. Just make sure that you're there and tuning in as we continue. But from myself, from these 3, everyone back in production, everyone here at Hi Res Studios, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Made in Georgia.